board meeting to order. And Paul, you're on first.
Accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law relating to the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency, December 22nd, 2020 public meeting of the Falmouth Planning Board shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternative public access to the meeting shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the meeting will be televised via Falmouth Community Television. 2, real-time public comment can be addressed to the planning board utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. This application will allow users to view the meeting and send a comment or question to the chair via the chat function. Submitted text comments will be read into the record at the appropriate points in the meeting. Zoom login instructions. Instructions and the meeting link for this specific meeting can be found the following web address: www.falmouthmass.us/1112/planning board. Please allow 10 to 15 minutes of preparation time to log in, though it may be less if you had previously used Zoom on the device you use to access the meeting. 3, additionally, public comments may be sent in advance to a meeting to planning@falmouthma.gov at least 5 hours prior to the beginning of the meeting. Documents and audio or video files may also be submitted via the email. Submitted email comments and documents will be made a part of the meeting record and may be read into the record, summarized, or displayed during the meeting at the discretion of the chair. Applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may appear remotely and are not required to be physically present. Applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may contact the planning department to arrange an alternative means of real-time participation if unable to use the Zoom virtual meeting software. Documentary exhibits and/or visual presentation should be submitted in advance of the meeting to planning so they may be displayed for remote public access viewing.
Thank you, Paul. And we also have the minutes of December 15th, Paul.
I suggest we table this since I have not received them.
Okay, may I have a motion to table?
So move.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor of tabling, signify by raising your hand. Thank you. First on the agenda is a release for Cape Cod Club lot release, and I believe Kelly Cardoza should be elevated now. Justin, if you will. She's representing the Cape Club.
There's no place to put it.
Sure it is.
There we go.
So I unmuted me. Can you see me?
We cannot see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, here. There.
There you go. Now we can see you.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Durfee Cardoza, and I represent the applicant, FWG. Tom, you have a site plan that we were going to put up?
Yes, if the chair will indulge me, I'm going to share the screen and show the lots, please.
Of course.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's better than looking at me.
No.
So we're here tonight to request that the board release the remaining 14 lots at the Cape Club. It's been more than a year since the board voted to release the original 14. And those lots are the ones that are shown on your site plan here as 1 through 14 with the red outline. Then in July of 2020, we asked you to swap out 2 of the lots, put lots 1 and 2 back under the covenant, and release lots 28 and 18. So when we originally came before you to ask for the lot release, there really were 2 issues. The condition of the gravel base and the pavement. And then the second one was the type of bounds that would be installed and what the cost would be. You might recall that the roadway was paved prior to approval by planning staff and Falmouth Engineering Division approval, and the testing of the compacted gravel yielded varying results. So in June of 2020, FWG, the owner, engaged Briggs Engineering and Testing from Rockland, Mass, to conduct a third-party review, and basically just said to them, take all of the information, go look at stuff, and look at it as if it was a third-party review and you were not being hired by us. And so what they did is they started from the beginning. They looked at the materials that had been used, the previous testing, and they designed their own testing protocol. So they came out and they did that work in June, and it wasn't witnessed by anybody. But they determined what they thought was the reason that we were getting those varying results. So they presented the results to Tom and to Falmouth Engineering Division staff at a site meeting on July 16th. And we agreed to a testing methodology that would be witnessed to be conducted across the site. So Falmouth Engineering Division was on site on September 3rd to do that testing at 5 additional locations across the roadway. The final results were submitted in a written report dated October 2nd. And what their work concluded was that the gravel base that had been installed contained concrete. The concrete contained moisture. The concrete contained hydrogen. The hydrogen was read as moisture by the Troxler nuclear density gauge. So they used 2 different types of testing. One was they actually cooked each of the samples on a hot plate at the site, and they evaluated the field evaporable moisture content of every soil. They redid the proctors at every single location, and they did something called a sand cone test. Those removed the influence of the concrete in the gravel base, and they were able to determine that the roadway base meets or exceeds the board's requirements. So after we submitted that report to Tom and to Falmouth Engineering Division, we met with them to discuss that report, but also to talk about what kind of bounds would be installed and what that requirement would be. We settled on bounds that were typical of what's required in your code, and we resubmitted the calculations for the information that needed to be completed or the materials that needed to be supplied, the bond amount of $311,250. So I ask that you release the remaining lots once the rider is issued in that amount.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of Ms. Cardoza? Okay. Are you all satisfied to, yes, Paul?
Tom, do you have any comments on it?
No, I think that Kelly and her people have done a great job at working with us to resolve the issues that we had. Everybody, Falmouth Engineering wise, in planning is pleased with where we're at right now. And we've got a motion that I've drafted for the board. I'm happy to share if you like, but we're in good shape on this development.
I think everybody has a copy of that, Tom. It came in our packet. So if somebody would please read that motion. Who's got it?
Pat,
Okay,
I'm
Charlotte.
going to be, no, not to read it. I'm going to be at a disadvantage here. There's something up with the mail at North Falmouth Post Office, and I did not get a packet, nor did I find that in everything that was emailed to me.
Same thing.
Okay,
I didn't get a packet either.
then I will read the motion.
There is a mail problem affecting a lot of mail offices, not just North Falmouth.
No, I understand that. My sister sent something over a week ago from Columbus that should have gotten here. It hasn't, so.
Yeah, and let me say, I'm very sorry to hear that. We got them out on Thursday to make sure we had every advantage. But when we get something like this, if you get close, give us a jingle. We'll reproduce them and deliver them to your doorstep, as you know we'll do. So sorry about
I was
that.
just hoping they were going to be there today, Tom. I was the backup at the mail has made the New York Times.
Yeah.
So it's not just us, but it is affecting what I've got right now.
No,
Well,
they've got a ton of workers out sick or on COVID leave. So may I read it?
Yes.
Okay, I move that lots 1, 2, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27 be released from the existing covenant contingent upon receipt of a bond writer to bond number 565223 from the Main Street America Group in the amount of $311,250. May I have a second to that motion, please?
Second.
Okay, I can't tell you. 3 hands went up for seconding. Okay. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, we're all in favor, 100%. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very
Kelly.
much. Have a
Very
great
good.
holiday.
You too.
You too.
Presentation.
Okay, so yep, there we go. Next on the agenda is approval not required. The applicant is McSweeney Companies, Inc. Plan of land to divide parcel 2A into 5 building lots located on Palmer Avenue. 3503001000A, 3503002000. And I understand that, let's see. Bob Ahmet, Attorney Bob Ahmet may wish to comment on this. So if we could elevate Mr. Ahmet.
I'll be happy to share the plan if you'd like me.
Yes, but let's get Bob on screen first, okay, to make sure that he's
Okey-doke.
here and going to be elevated. Tom, do you know whether Bob Ahmet is in attendance?
I'm not seeing Bob in the house right now, but I'll be happy to
Okay,
address this. There's nothing particularly
No.
controversial about this.
okay, so please go ahead, Tom, at this
I'm gonna
time.
Go ahead and put the screen on the
Yes,
plan on the screen. So here you should be seeing an A&R for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots on Palmer Avenue. So these lots all have frontage on an existing public way that is paved. I was out there today to make sure that what we thought was there is there. It is a public way. The lots do have frontage. There are no issues with illusory frontage. There's no guardrails. There's no wetlands in the way. We require a
Tom, we just got a chat message that Bob Ahmet is there, came from Kevin Clower.
Okay.
Looked like, so,
very well, if we can elevate Bob. So this is the second plan showing the topography that just shows you that there aren't any wetland issues along the way. The concern is that even though there's a public way and there's frontage on those, can you access the frontage from the way? And in this case, for all 5 lots, you can access that frontage.
okay. Good evening. Oh, now your name is Kevin, huh, Bob?
Yeah, I'm trying to change that. I think that Tom has, very well described the plan. It should be endorsed, approval not required. It's a public road, and Mike McGrath has confirmed that no problems with getting access of it. We didn't submit, but I received late this afternoon also a letter from Carl Cavosa saying the same thing. So we don't have any access problems, and the lots all conform.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of Mr. Ahmet? Okay, then I would ask that somebody move that this A&R be endorsed without regard to Jim.
I move that the A&R be endorsed without regard to buildability.
And all
Second.
the other little codicils that go with that,
Everything
okay.
else we add to it, yeah.
Yep. It's been moved and
Second.
seconded. If there are not any other further questions in regard to this, please signify approval by raising your hand. Okay, 7 out of 7. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, and I'll stay on for the next matter too.
That's fine. The next
Great.
matter is, it's a
Who was the
public
second?
hearing. The applicant is Sandwich Road Development LLC, special permit application along with a site plan review application to have a contractor's yard in the AGA district, including a contractor's yard building with floor area of 7,450 square feet, and exterior contractor's yard storage, parking, and assembly area of 39,900 square feet, and one detached single-family dwelling located at 0 Sandwich Road, map number 1701 032 000. And this is, let's see, we have Mike McGrath also, I believe.
No, actually Tom Bunker and Mark Bogosian.
Okay. So with that correction, yeah, Paul, you need to, I know, do your thing on,
I'd like to read the public notices.
yes.
This public meeting notice was published in the Falmouth Enterprise on December 4th and December 11th, 2020, and 13 abutters were notified by certified mail return receipt.
Okay. Okay. So for the applicant now, please, whoever wants to lead off.
So I'll lead off, Pat, thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
with me, of course, and on the screen is Tom Bunker from BSS Design, the engineering and surveying firm in Falmouth that has prepared all the plans that we submitted. As you know, in an agricultural district, the planning board can approve a contractor's yard by special permit under certain conditions that are set forth in the zoning bylaw. This is a plan in the agricultural A district that meets all of the requirements and meets them with excess in terms of distance from abutters and the like. Tom is able to show you, I believe, an aerial view of the site. So I think we should start with that, describe the site, and then we'll go to the plan itself. So you have in front of you the town's most recent aerial photo in its GIS system. And the 7¼ acre site is depicted in yellow. To the right side of that lot, which is east, you can see the 100-foot wide electric company easement area. And to the southeast and the, southwest and the west and the northwest, you can see the existing contractor's yard of Greener Image Landscaping. They have in total of around 11 acres, much of it devoted to their contractor's yards and their offices in the building that you can see close to Sandwich Road. Tom's pointing it out. So I think we have, if I recall correctly, about 180 feet of frontage on Sandwich Road. The property is just a little bit of it on the northeast side is within a water resource protection district for municipal wells, a half mile or so to the north. And other than that, the site's never been developed. It's thickly treed, especially in the area where Tom just had his cursor. And one of the interesting things about that area is it's substantially higher than the area to the west, that area where we're going to show you the contractor's yard activity is proposed. And that treed area at an elevation some 20 feet higher than the contractor's yard actually provides, should provide some significant buffer to the houses that are to the east. In order to have a contractor's yard, your lot has to be 300 feet away in the agricultural aid district from any residences that were built prior to a certain date. I forget what it was. I think it was around 2000. And so on the plans we submitted, we identified all the houses, showed which have that protection and the distances. And the result is, you can see the houses there. The result is, as your staff report shows, that we've satisfied that condition that this contractor's yard lot is going to be the requisite distance. And you'll notice that on this plan, now that we have the site plan, we're actually going to divide the 7.25 acre parcel in order to meet that 300-foot distance. So we will create a lot with that line. There'll be an unbuildable parcel, this parcel A, that includes the electric company easement, and the remaining, I think it's 5.56 acres will be a new lot that meets all the requirements of setbacks, and the contractor's yard itself and the clearing for it, the limit of work, is actually in the farthest direction away from houses that are on Hayway Road, and really hugs the corner of the property that is surrounded on the two sides by the greener image landscaping contractor's yard. And it's worth noting also that to the north, the next three properties up Sandwich Road, the first one owned by a Botello Trust, those three properties are all vacant. So we have no residential abutters at this time in that area. Across Sandwich Road, there is a house on the corner of Boxberry Hill Road, but its access is off of Boxberry Hill Road, not off of Sandwich, and it's surrounded by town-owned open space to the west side of Boxberry Hill Road, and then to the north and east of that house, which is a two-family house. So in terms of siting a contractor's yard with minimal impact on a residential neighborhood, I don't think we could do much better than this. A portion of this 7 and a bit acre property is mapped as for natural, the Natural Heritage Program in the state and for endangered species. We've shown the map in that green hatch, that's that area. We've already submitted these plans to the state, to the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, and they have approved this project, saying that there would not be a take of a protected species. The concerns they had in the area had to do with different species of butterflies and moths. But we end up clearing for this project little less than 20% of the new lot. That's less of the, because we're now talking the 5 some acres. Allowed in the agricultural district would be 40% lot coverage. The structures are only going to be between 3 and 4%, whereas 20% is the figure that's allowed by right. As stated in your notice, the application includes not only the contractor's yard with the 7,450 square foot metal building, 28 feet high to the ridge. There'll also be a house which is allowed in a contractor's yard. The intention is to use it for employees, for security. A family could be there, but somebody associated with the owner's company. So in total, we have a single 4-bedroom house proposed, plus the contractor's yard building. And under Title V, the required septic flow is a total of, I think it's of 840 gallons, 400 for the contractor's building with 8 sheds, and 4-bedroom, of course, is 440 gallons. So for over 7 acres of property, we're only proposing the equivalent of less than 8 bedrooms. And we're locating all of this development outside the Water Resource Protection District on the north side of the lot, except for a couple of 100 square feet of clearing and driveway in that area that Tom is pointing out. A very, very small intrusion into there where development is allowed, but we need certain protections. All that'll be there is gravel driveway and then landscaping. I know that there have been a couple of letters received by the planning board from neighbors on Hayway Road with concerns about the clearing of any of this property, about any impact on wildlife. Those houses are each more than 500 feet away from the limit of work. And we are ending up preserving much of this lot, and the development has been reviewed and approved by the state, as I mentioned. We've submitted, in addition to all the details of the curb cut opening and so on, a plan that shows site distances from this driveway on Sandwich Road, both to the north and south, and those site distances far exceed required stopping distance. You have a staff report that includes the usual detailed engineering report from the engineering department. And you'll see that in this case, there's really very little that the town reviewers had of concern. There was some questions about drainage and grading. And as a result, Tom Bunker has submitted some revised plans that address those issues. I think the only thing we haven't done is identified all of the trees of 4-inch caliper that are on the site. There are an awful lot of them. And particularly where this project has been reviewed and approved by the state, we'd ask for a waiver of that requirement. And we are in a water resource protection, in a coastal pond overlay district where the planning board could require a environmental impact statement or could require such a strategy as including a denitrification septic system, but I would come back to the fact that we are limiting development to approximately the equivalent of 1 bedroom per acre on this property, and think that a waiver of that kind of septic system would be more than appropriate. There has been considerable discussion that I've had and the developers had with Amir Smakevich, who is the owner of A Greener Image Landscaping, with his wife, Julie. And we've submitted a letter from them stating their support for this, this project. So if you don't have any, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer anything more that you have. And I just refer you to not only our detailed application, but to the very detailed reports from staff, engineering department, and the planning staff, which have recommendations. And the recommendation of the staff is that site plan approval be issued with minimal conditions, basically per plan, and that the special permit can be granted also with minimal conditions listed. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Jim?
Did I see a requirement for a tight tank on this side?
Jim, you're very difficult to hear. It's echoey. And
Okay,
there, much better.
I'll lean forward. Did I see a requirement for a tight tank on this site?
No.
Okay, then I'm mistaken. I looked at a lot of documents, forget it. It must have been on another plan.
Well, we do have a tight tank.
Why? That's my question, why?
I take that back then.
Any commercial garage.
Okay, so you're doing maintenance on the trucks. Okay, that's the answer. I got it.
Not necessarily for
Not a
maintenance,
septic
but
system tight tank.
not a septic system, but yeah, for the commercial garage, every commercial garage has to have a floor drain.
And so
and
tight
those-
tank for the floor drain, okay.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see it, but now that's the explanation. Thank you.
And I'm sorry for my mistake.
I thought I was wrong.
Okay, does anybody, Paul?
Yeah, I was concerned about the stormwater runoff, but this is a very difficult site, and I see Scott Chuda has raised some questions about that. And I think most of that's been addressed here. The one question I have is, the plans show a native dense material for the driveway in the entire area. Is that hard pack, or can it drain through that material? What is that?
The dense grade, it can drain through somewhat. In our calculations, we've calculated that as 100% impervious, but in fact, it will. Water will drain through it somewhat, but we can't count it with too much drainage. But it is the hard pack dense grade, which would typically go under a coat of asphalt if it were going to be paved.
Okay.
Pat,
Yes, Charlotte.
Thank you.
in my papers, I found the elevations for the big storage building, the metal storage building, but I didn't see any elevations for the house. Are they somewhere in the packet and I didn't receive them?
No, that's a perfectly good observation, but we did not include designs for the single-family house, which is set back, I believe it's 89 feet from the street. It's just a house. And with that big setback, and we didn't feel that there was any reason why the planning board would want to need to review the plans for a single-family house. We can submit plans if you want, but it didn't seem necessary, and it seemed a bit premature.
Okay.
Premature, does that mean you would submit them before something was built?
Well, we obviously have to submit them before a house is built there. I don't know we're not sure what the timing would be for the construction of the house versus the contractor's yard building.
Okay, and my only other question was, I couldn't find in the papers who the owner is. You're listed as representing the owner.
Oh, the owner is a Massachusetts limited liability company called Sandwich Road Development LLC. And the principal of that is Mark Bogosian. As you know, Mark's business in town has a lot of vehicles. They have more and more large vehicles. And they really need a place to put their large vehicles and store materials. So they're looking for a contractor's yard, and they would also have the ability to provide contractor's yard space for other contractors on the site.
And the final thing is, there are letters from people saying that they received this information very belatedly, and I wondered, Tom, if you could comment on that.
Oops.
Tom?
Are you referring to Tom Bott?
Tom Bott,
Yeah,
yes.
I had Tom in mind, Tom Bott.
Yes, thank you. I was scrolling up to find my mute button or my unmute button. Yes, we're always doing our very best to get things on the agenda as quickly as we can. So when information comes in, we send out notice to the abutters ASAP prior to the hearing. So I don't know specifically when that information arrived with the abutters. We did get a couple of letters back. Michaela has those, and she is ready and willing to read those into the record. But we typically don't have a hearing that opens and closes on the first night. And so the hearing, assuming the hearing continues as I expected it will tonight, there'll be other opportunities for folks to make any comment. But we get things out as quickly as we can so we can have the hearings scheduled so we don't get sort of a backlog of things trying to move projects along here. But at no point is anyone trying to disenfranchise or rush abutters through the process.
Thank you.
Okay, now, yes, John.
Thank you. I have several questions. The curb cut that shows on Sandwich Road, is that currently there, or is that going to be a new curb cut?
There is no curb cut there at this time.
Okay. And the 4-bedroom house that's proposed, is that going to be a single family dwelling? Or is that going to be an apartment house?
No, it's only proposed as a single family dwelling.
So one family, not 4, 5, 6, 7 workers living there?
Well, the occupants would have to meet the definition of family in the zoning bylaw, which could involve a few co-workers living together cooperatively. But it's a single family home, a single kitchen, and it may well be a family, a traditional family, if you can still say that. Or it could be a group of people who together meet the definition of family. But particularly given its location on Sandwich Road, 89 feet back from the street, no abutters to the north, a contractor's yard to the south, this would be a pretty good place for a local businessman who employs a great number of people to be able to offer some housing.
I understand. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, the answer is it's a single family home, John,
Okay,
not an apartment house.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think, and I might add that an apartment house, I don't believe would be an allowed use here.
Well, everyone in business today is trying to find a place for their employees to live. And you do have neighbors here and we have some letters, so I have to address that situation. I don't see a lighting plan. Maybe there is one, but I can't see a lighting plan for the long driveway.
That's a
or-
good observation also, John. And I asked Mr. Bogosian about that earlier today, and he said he would be using down lighting. I mentioned again that the contractor's yard is, it's at elevation 42, and you can see the steep rise to the northwest where it quickly goes up to over 60 feet elevation. So with down lighting, hopefully the impact on neighbors several hundred feet away, the authors of the letters you've received are both 500 or more feet from the closest point of the cleared area.
No.
Hopefully it won't be a problem. Down lighting.
When you're considering the lighting plan, consider it's a pretty large parking area. There should be some safety situations there for some lighting, so give that some consideration. And then finally, the way I read the bylaw, maybe I'm not correct, but the way I read it is this is for a contractor yard and possibly a subcontractor, singular, not plural. And there's 8 bays here. So maybe I'm misunderstanding the bylaw, but if it's going to be for one contractor and one subcontractor, I'm all for it. But if it's going to be rented out to 6 or 7 subcontractors, and I don't think that meets the spirit of a contractor's yard. I think that would be another use.
Well, I think we better look at the definition of contractor's yard. I do hear what you're saying. I don't think it's ever been, that issue's been raised, because I don't think that we normally would look at who the tenants are of a use.
I can comment on the fact that we have intentions to take the entire property for just my company, Longfellow. So we need the space. We need the space for our own vehicles, and that is what we intend to do for the foreseeable future.
Okay, thank you.
That's Mark Bogosian speaking.
Sure.
Mhm. Is there anybody else on the board? Remember, I cannot see you, so you're going to have to speak up. Who has any questions? Okay, then we probably should stop screen sharing at this point.
Okay.
Okay, Michaela, did you wish to say anything?
Yes, I have 2 letters going against the project, and then I have 1 letter in support of the project. So I'm gonna read the letters out loud, if you give me just one moment.
Okay.
All right, so this was submitted from Margaret. I'm not seeing a last name right
No
now.
last name.
This was an email we received. I live at 398 Hayway Road and oppose the addition of a contractor's yard off Sandwich Road, where green image landscaping now exists. There is already enough noise during the spring/summer months as it is, and now you want to add more by expanding it to include a contractor's yard with all the trucks/machines/equipment, etc., coming and going at all hours. Plus the addition of a new dwelling/building to be occupied by seasonal employees, which will add even more noise/problems. I am also upset about the disturbing of all the wildlife that travels through there. At one time, there were loads of different birds, such as swallows/bluebirds. Now there are none, and the deer that frequently travel through. We were only notified of this last week. I feel they are trying to slide this through without giving the surrounding neighbors a chance to oppose. They are sweetening this deal with a building/house for employees, etc., etc. Not to mention it is the week of Christmas. Shame on them. The whole thing stinks. I have another letter, a handwritten letter in opposition. And this one is from Dorothy Scarzy. Apologize if that pronunciation is not correct. Dear Falmouth Planning Board, I and several other neighbors, this is a handwritten letter, so excuse me a little bit. I'm going to try and received this application only 6 days before December 22nd, 2020. And I and Jim Rabesa are not online for the virtual Zoom meeting on Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020. We and several other neighbors are strongly opposed to the contractor's yard. The existing noise from the current contractor's yard we put up with. However, to have a second contractor's yard would be downright ugly and spoil the rest of our lives. After the first yard was started many years ago, it was very sad to lose the bird song that came back from the woods every year. It never came back. The deer population that comes from Otis Air Force Base was the currently vacant land to enter our yards, and the construction land owned by Falmouth from a vernal pool next to the current contractor's yard, all the way to the water tower on Hayway Road. From there, they enter the state-owned parcel between Hayway and Route 151. It makes the hunters happy come deer hunting season. It's understandable that people like to make money. However, this contractor's yard proposed should not be allowed to happen. It would be excellent for Sandwich Road Development LLC to meet with Falmouth Conservation Group and pay the development group for the cost of the land. Although a second contractor's yard would be profitable, a second yard would be very unkind to the animals and nature lovers' joy of good health. Jim Rabesa, I, and many other neighbors will suffer our last years and many other future dwellers from a second contractor's yard. The proposed noise, taking down of trees, trucks, etc., is too awful to allow next to a current yard that we currently live with. Thank you for helping Falmouth taxpayers and citizens and having good lives. And then we did receive a letter in support as well. And Bob, I believe you said her name earlier in the meeting. I'm going to have you help me if that's okay with, what is her last name? I don't want to mess it up. I'm sorry.
Smakavic. Say that for me.
Smakavic.
Perfect.
Thank you. Dear Planning Board members, my wife Julie Smakavic and I own 961 and 981 Sandwich Road, where we operate greener image landscaping under our own special permits issued by the Planning Board. We also own the abutting residence at 955 Sandwich Road and 943 Sandwich Road, the latter being our home. We have reviewed the application of Sandwich Road Development, LLC, Mark Bagazian. Mark has agreed to install and maintain an evergreen buffer of existing vegetation and white pines between our 981 Sandwich Road property and the proposed buildings, house and 7,450 square foot metal building, to confine contractors' yard noise, dust, and visual impacts. Mark has also agreed to install fencing along the boundary with 981 Sandwich Road for safety and to separate our contractor's yard. With these understandings, we've reached with Mark. Julie and I support the Planning Board's granting the requested special permit.
And we normally would allow public to come in, but via chat, but I am not seeing anything other than the 2 chats from before. There's no indication of anybody, is there?
Nope, I have not seen any chat. And I don't see any participants with hand raised or anything.
Okay, with that, I'll come back to the board. Are there any further questions at this point? Then I would need a motion to continue this, leave it open and to continue it. To what date, Tom?
Well, right now, the planning board has meetings on, regular scheduled meeting is January 12th and the 26th. We have our January 5th meeting, but that is booked with town meeting business.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that we did receive some correspondence from Mr. Bunker on the drainage issues that received, I think, maybe yesterday, maybe today. So we haven't sent that to engineering yet. So we will forward that over to engineering. I would venture to say it shouldn't take very long for them to review that. I did want to clarify, do we want to see a lighting plan for this to show what the lighting is proposed for the parking lot in the driveway?
I would assume so, Tom.
Just clarify.
John?
Yes.
Okay.
We can do that.
And also I understood that Tom has made some changes to answer some of engineering's questions, and I'm assuming that that was not on the plan that we currently have. Is that correct?
Well, it has been submitted this today.
Okay. So we'd need to have that as well. So the question is, should we be looking at this on January 12th or January, what was it, Tom?
26th.
26th. Would
Well,
you?
we'd appreciate it if it could be on the 12th. It seems, given the minor changes which were directly related to the requests of the engineering department, I don't think it's going to take long for them to review it.
Okay, and the question is whether the 3 of you are available for that.
Who goes anywhere these days?
I know. And because this needs a supermajority vote, I'm assuming also that none of the planning board has other engagements for that time. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so January 12th seems like a good date to continue it to. So I would need a motion to continue this, both the special permit and the site plan review, to January 12th, same time,
So
same
moved.
place. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Please raise your hand to show you're in favor. Okay, 7 out of 7. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So we'll
Merry
see you back
Christmas.
here on the 12th, and have a wonderful holiday, all of you. And Bob, yours is just passed, I think, so I hope you had a good one.
Thank you.
We're moving on now, public discussion. The applicant is Falmouth Boat Storage LLC. Site plan review application to construct a new proposed building and exterior boat storage on a 1.94 leased, I guess that would be 1.94 acre leased area located at 550 East Falmouth Highway. And for this one, we have Paul Glynn and Mike McGrath. Paul Dreyer needs to say something.
Public meeting notice for this project was published in the Falmouth Enterprise on December 4th. 19 abutters were notified by regular mail. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, and if I may, while we're awaiting Mr. Glenn to be elevated.
Well, Paul is there. Paul Glynn is there. I do not see Mike McGrath. Is he going to be joining us or not?
I don't believe Mike is in the house tonight.
Okay.
I'm double checking. So if I may, we've had a number of conversations with the building commissioner and with town council that we have shared with Paul. As I said in my email to the board previously, I had a very pleasant conversation with Paul Glynn. I don't think I've ever had any other kind of conversation with Paul. And we agreed that we might disagree on this without being disagreeable. The issue is that the proposed use of a boat storage in LIA does not appear to be a permitted use in the district. We confirmed this with council, and as you saw in the email that I also forwarded from Irene Mullen, Associate Town Council, Tom, I agree that there is no basis in the bylaw for the planning board to approve a site plan for a use that is not permitted as of right or by special permit, and that there is no special permit for a use variance. I would recommend an outright denial of the application with the statement that boat storage is not available as of outright or by special permit in LIA, and thus the project does not meet the requirements for site plan review. In our conversation with Mr. Glenn earlier, he said, well, I'd prefer that the board approve the site plan with a note that says, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Paul, that the board approved the site plan with a note that says it doesn't comply with zoning, and they would take their chances down the line. In our conversation, I said, well, for the same reason that we don't approve airports site plans in residential districts, if it's not a use that's permitted in the district, it probably shouldn't be before the board. So town council's recommendation would be to deny the site plan because it's not a use available by right or by special permit in LIA. And with that, I will turn the floor back over. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Paul?
Hello there. I think Mike McGrath is here because we would like to present the site plan tonight to it. I'm not sure why he isn't here. I talked to him yesterday and he'd be here. But anyway, so a couple of issues that Tom has brought up here. The issue he's brought up, the issue of use, I don't think this board has the authority to deal with that. That's really where I am with it. If you want, I'm happy to discuss the whole issue of use, but I first think that you should understand the purpose and the authority that you're given with regard to site plan review. Okay, this isn't a zoning board, it's a planning board. And, you know, I'm right now looking at Brombrowski's zoning manual. A prior building commissioner called it the Bible. Anytime that there's an issue, he looked at this. I just want to read to you one thought about the site plan review. The site plan review powers of the planning board are limited to regulation of the use rather than its prohibition, while a special permit granting authority has full range of discretion in assessing an application, including the right to deny it. Site plan review doesn't deal with the issues of zoning, is my point. I don't think it's appropriate for you even to bring this up tonight, you know. But anyway, if you would like, I'm prepared, as if you were the zoning board, to talk to you. Then I think this is not only a use allowed by right, by special permit, but it's a use allowed by right. And I think if you look at the whole thing, it's an easy case to make. So Madam Chairman, would you like me to deal with this issue of use, or would you first like to discuss the issue of authority to even discuss the issue of use? I think everybody understands the difference there.
I really am caught here because we have 3 professionals from the town who say that it can't exist under our current bylaws. If it cannot exist under our current bylaws, then I don't see how we can do a site plan review even if it's not allowed to exist under our current bylaws. So that's why I'm caught betwixt and between. I'd like to hear from the other board members as to the direction they think we need to go in.
So I think that the professionals were all playing the role of the building commissioner. Now, my client, well, first of all, I should introduce myself, shouldn't I? I had just my little thing. My name's Paul Glenn. I'm from Glenn Law Offices. and I represent Falmouth Boat Storage LLC. That's an LLC controlled by the granddaughter of Paulina Rodriguez, whose estate owns the property, and the grandson-in-law of them. They've rented a portion of a larger parcel for this in the light industrial A zone. Okay, so anyway, it's behind the Falmouth, the East Falmouth, it's on East Falmouth Highway behind Route 28 Auto. Probably already knew, or all already knew that, but I thought I should just bring that up. It's an area where the clearing has already been done. There'll be no further disturbance or anything seen from the highway in that regard. So I think that the three professionals involved there were playing the role of building commissioner rather than the role of planning board. There's a risk if we were applying for an airport, it would be very risky on our part to do something absurd like that and ask for a site plan review, spend money on site plan review when there's no possibility for it. This is not an absurd situation. This is a situation that is very likely to prevail, that this is an allowed use if you look at it. So I'm happy to talk about the allowed use. It requires you to have an overview of all the zoning bylaws, to go through it and then go to the specific bylaws within an LAI district. This is in a light industrial A's district, this property. So is everybody prepared to do that, to go through it? I have the zoning book here with me, and I'd like you all to be able to read it and see it as I'm talking. But first of all, does the board feel they have authority to deal with the use?
If I can make one clarification.
Yeah.
If I can make one clarification,
Yes, Tom.
those three professionals were the building commissioner, town council, and the town planner. So we didn't go out on a flyer on our own. We always, when we get something like this and it raises a flag, we do that in-house research before we go out of house and fill in the applicant. So the meeting that we had was with myself, Michaela, Frank Duffy, Irene Mullen, assistant town council, and Michaela. So the building commissioner is involved in this process.
So I know how to appeal a decision of the building commissioner. I don't know if there's a process to appeal a decision of the planning board on a use issue. That's the building commissioner's call to make that. If he made that, when we go apply to our building permit, I understand the process. I don't think there is a process for that. You go to the Board of Appeals, you leave somebody. So, I mean, here we are. Would you like me to just go forward with my use argument? You tell me, Madam Chairman.
What say you, board? Jim?
Can we actually see the site that we're talking about? I've driven by it. I was trying to understand exactly where we're talking about. I went down there. I saw one site that's in a close to location that's full of boats. And there was no area. Usually we see something staked out when we're doing site plan review, and this is it. I couldn't tell what we're talking about. It looks like what are we talking about here?
Yeah. Give me a second. I'll put the plan up on the sheet.
Okay, Pam.
And I'd like to see an aerial of what's on the site now.
Pam.
Yeah, I drove up there too. I couldn't figure much out. But what I'm concerned about is, we always talk about adhering to what the town officials, especially our town attorney, and if they're saying that this is not something we can move forward with, why would we spend the time moving forward with it?
Because my thought is on this, well, if our zoning bylaws are only a suggestion, why do we even have them? If we're not listening to our legal staff, if we're not listening to our other town professionals, I mean, it's just like, okay, the speed limit's just a suggestion. It says 50, why not go 100?
I agree.
It's not right to have me argue against a piece of paper, a decision that I can't see. There's this thought we all agreed, what is it based on? I can make an argument that this is an allowed use, like a very good one. I don't know what they considered. It's just about a matter of fairness, due process. How can I respond to something that I haven't seen? The building commissioner, it's his call. I respect the building commissioner. I'd like to be able to read what his opinion is and what it's based on. And then I have something that I can respond to. This is difficult.
Tom, may I have your response to that?
Sure. Obviously, I don't expect the board to make any action tonight. We can certainly continue that, this discussion. And what the town council said was not to not take it up, but just deny it as a use that's not permitted in the district. So we can clearly, and even if the board was approving it or considering not approving it, the certificate doesn't rule on these things the first night anyhow. We continue it to the next meeting for the staff to write a decision for the board. So it's the board's pleasure as to what we'd like to do. And I think hearing out Mr. Glenn is good form. I think taking town council's advice is very good form. I know Mark Grabowski, he was attorney for town council. His phone number is in my cell phone, and he did write the Bible. But you get a lot of lawyers and a lot of different decisions, so we typically tend to listen to ours. So I've got two things queued up for the board. I've got the GIS aerial of the site, and I've got the site plan if we'd like to look at both of those this evening.
Yes.
So I believe what you see on the map right now is an aerial of the site. The area that's cleared here is the LIA, and the area where the trees are at is essentially right at the zoning line. So we bring up the site plan and we blow that up. So here we are, East Falmouth Highway across from Judy Ann Drive, the access driveway here, and that is the site where they're proposing to put the new building and the indoor and outdoor boat storage with the drainage swale right here at the tip of the LIA district. Just across the other side of that basin, that drainage basin, is the public use district.
Pat?
Yes,
Could we go
Charlotte.
back to the satellite image?
Yeah,
It went
please.
by so fast, I
Sure.
couldn't even get my bearings before it was gone.
Sorry about that. Here we are. So the site is highlighted in yellow. It's a 21-acre site. So not all the site is shown on here. It continues up forested, but this is the active part of the site. As Paul pointed out, Paul Glenn pointed out, in addition to uses that are on there, there are 3 residents on the site as well as the existing uses and now the proposed boat storage in the LIA district.
Jim?
I just wanted to make clear, all those white things on the property to the east, aren't those all boats? And that's all boat storage?
They certainly look like boats to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question those are boats. That's been boat storage as long as anybody can remember. And it goes much farther north than that. And the 3 houses I didn't point out, those 3 pre-existing non-conforming uses could become important. Is a third argument why the Board of Appeals will have authority to, I have 2 that I'd just like to talk to you tonight about, as far as this being an allowed use and a special permit use. And also those 2 pre-existing houses on this spot give the zoning, the ZBA broad authority to make a determination what is a good use for this property. That's their jurisdiction. And the other one, it's car storage pretty much in the rest of the LIA area. Madam Chairman, could I read some of the bylaws to you?
Of course.
You know, I'm doing this, I'm responding to an argument that I can't see, which makes it difficult. But maybe as I make it, perhaps the written decision might be a little different than the verbal one that we've got here. Which we do. Okay, so I look at our bylaws. We live in the town of Falmouth where boating has always been and still is a long tradition and a very important part of our economy. Many people live here because of the great boating that exists. And this is something that's gone on way before even zoning. All right, so you look at light industrial, that's where we are. But let's just think about for a while where boat storage is allowed already. You look at general residence, it's allowed. Look at public use, it's allowed by special permit. Look at residential areas, it's allowed. So what's going on here? Light industrial, it isn't allowed? Find me there are so many boat yards in town, they're all over the place. We're being told here that it's allowed by special permit in a residential zone, but it's not in a light industrial zone where it exists all over town. Now, so there's a little difference, you know, let me explain. In the light industrial district, I say it's allowed by special permit. It says other permitted principal uses. No, I'm sorry, permitted principal uses. It says marina. And it goes down, boat building, repairs and storage. And just by the way, in light industrial districts, just look at all the different things that are allowed. You can, this is the intense part of the town bylaws. This light industrial is an intense use. So what's going on? How can we have difference of opinion so extreme here? Now, if you look into the residential district where it's allowed by special permit, they're saying, you know, we know boat storage in agricultural districts, it's allowed by special permit. That bylaw is saying that we know boat storage is so important in this town that we're going to allow it even in residential thing. And it says boat storage as a commercial operation in a residential zone. It's so important to the town that we allow it in a residential zone. And look at the other uses allowed in a residential zone. It might be a slight exaggeration, but I think I can very confidently say there's no other non-residential use allowed in any of these areas in a residential district. You know, you can have boarding, you can have in-law apartments, but it's all pretty much residential except for boat. So I think the argument must be, I don't know, but I think the argument must be, boy, they laid it out very carefully with 8 different conditions in the residential zones, but they just gave it a measly, marine boat storage is allowed in a light industrial. And then you can go over to special permits and it goes E, blacksmith, builder, carpenter, and similar uses that the board finds to be compatible with industrial uses. There's ample authority for a zoning board of appeals to give a special permit that this is a similar use to other industrial zones. An allowed use is a marina, repairs and storage. It's an allowed use. It says it right there. It doesn't lay out 8 conditions. It's really, if you look at the bylaws as a whole, they're kind of like screaming out to you, please put boat storage in industrial. We don't even have any of those conditions that we have over in residential. We think bylaws are very important. We think boat building storage is so important that we'll even allow it in a residential district with conditions. We don't put those conditions in the light industrial district. Is that a question? So should I answer this? I see hands.
Bob first and then Charlotte.
Okay, it says docking of commercial passenger or freight vessels, party boats exceeding 33 feet at the water line. So the definition of docking.
Where are we?
240-57 I.
240-57.
So my question is what's the definition of docking?
Well, we're not looking for docking.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is, can docking be termed storage?
I suppose, yeah, docking could. It could. It's really hard to read this bylaw to say that boat storage is forbidden. It's so forbidden, it's like having an airport in a residential area. It's hard to read the bylaws to say this is forbidden. You can come through with a lot of different things, but it's just really hard to come to that conclusion. And it's not, I don't understand it. I'm just at a loss. I don't know what to respond to. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, Charlotte.
Before the zoning board first, before it comes before us.
Yeah.
Well,
I was just going to say that.
Well, I'd like to say something different from that.
Please, Charlotte.
Mr. Glenn has made some really good points. I think when you look at the surrounding uses for the land that he's talking about, that makes its own points. And I think one of his best points was, how can he deal with an opinion that he can't even look at, nothing in writing, and neither can we. So this is going to be continued anyway. And I wonder if we could have, Tom, that Mr. Glenn said it's a decision or opinion, however you want to term it. Could we see that in writing before the next, the meeting at which this is continued?
Yeah, we can do that. Town council generally does not share their opinion as a public document, but we will certainly do that for you.
And I couldn't appeal a town council opinion. I can appeal the opinion of the building commissioner. So that would be the important document.
What I heard is that there were 3 people contributing to this opinion, 3 professionals, we're calling them now.
Yeah.
Then they are contributed to this opinion. So I don't know what that means as far as whose letterhead is on it, but we should understand that's where it's coming from. Is that right, Tom?
Yes, we'll absolutely have that for you.
Well, lawyers advise clients, but it would be an opinion of the building commissioner, and with all the advice he can get, and then I can respond to it.
Well, let's go with what we've already had, but see it in writing first.
Yeah.
Well, there's something else in here under 240-54, under F, and I don't quite understand it. It says it's got to do with fabricating, manufacturing, and so on allowed. And it says boat yards and buildings thereon, and electronics plants and buildings shall be exempt from the provisions of this subsection. Okay, that means specifically that they're not allowed, it appears.
Or they're not required to comply with the rest of it. Yeah, but it says marinas are allowed right underneath it. I read
marinas
that
are
as saying
allowed.
You can't employ more than 35 square. This is a restriction to manufacturing. Manufacturing is allowed it's an allowed use, and in F they're restricting how much manufacturing can be done. And it's a 10,000 square foot thing. I think they're saying boat yards and buildings are exempt from those restrictions. Is what that's about, meaning we really want boat yards here. We
I don't
want
know.
them.
I can't determine it. Jim?
I think there's a fundamental question here. Are we really discussing a use? And I don't think that's our job.
Right.
I think we are doing site plan, and as soon as we go into use, and I think that for us to take a position that we're denying it because we don't like the use. But I don't believe use is in our wheelhouse. I'm confused by the recommendations we're getting to deal with this.
And Paul, you had a question, and then Tom.
Now, I was just going to say, I'm very reluctant to go against the advice of counsel and the other two professionals in town here. Mr. Glenn, with all due respect, you're making a legal argument against this board, and we're not attorneys. And if you want to make that argument, perhaps you should make it to the town council and continue this and see what you come back with. But to argue a legal point to this board doesn't make a lot of sense from my perspective. With all due respect, I don't see why we have to continue this right now.
Tom?
So as we talked about, we're very much going to be continuing this, but the two things that I want to bring to bear is that the application is for boat storage, not a marina. No one has suggested this is a marina, and boat storage is one of those uses for a marina, but we're not talking about a marina. I got a request for boat storage. In the zoning bylaw, where use is not listed, it is generally prohibited. In particular, if that use is noted in another zoning district. And so where you have boat storage that is allowed use, as Mr. Glenn pointed out, in general residence and PR and some residential areas, that clearly states that this is a use, boat storage, that is allowed in some zoning districts. It's just not allowed in LIA because that's the way the zoning bylaw was written. So that's the point that we have, is that it's not a permitted use by right or by special permit in LIA. And when you look at the purpose of site plan review, for each use for a site plan is required a significant potential addition to developing or a developed area of town into a residential, commercial, industrial neighborhood. The purpose of site plan review is to ensure the design and layout of certain developments permitted as a matter of right or by special permit will constitute a suitable development and will not result in detriment to the neighborhood or the environment. The key phrase there that town council clued in on is certain developments permitted as a matter of right or by special permit. And this is not a use that's allowed as a matter of right or by special permit in the LIA district. And that is the nature of town council's opinion. And one we'll happily share with Mr. Glenn and talk to Rod about him putting it on his stationery as well. Because as Paul points out, site plan isn't in the law, Massachusetts general law. And while we have an appeal for special permits, we have appeals for subdivisions, there's no appeal of a site plan. There's simply an appeal of the building permit that is issued if a site plan is approved. So I understand Paul's point to how do I appeal the planning board denying a site plan? And the answer, I believe, is, well, you don't appeal denial of a site plan. But as I said, we'll happily continue this until date certain. And we'll put some correspondence together for Mr. Glenn from council and from the building commissioner.
And I don't disagree with that legal theory. If a use is allowed someplace and prohibited or not mentioned other places, then it's not an allowed use in that district. I understand that. But if you read it as a whole, it's pretty clear the bylaws are saying, please build boat storage in the light industrial. The opinion should include something that states you have jurisdiction to do this. I don't know if he thought about all those things, that you have jurisdiction to make this decision.
Well, that was the opinion of council, and why we brought council and the building commissioner in, where council said, quote, I would deny it.
Bob?
Getting back to what Jim and I have both said about this being discussion about use, and use is usually the domain of the Board of Appeals. And I think if the Board of Appeals said that this was something that was allowed, then we went to site plan review, because then we're discussing all the things that we discuss about site plan review. I just don't think we should be discussing the use. Because I can find, what you quoted there, Pat, where it says boatyards and buildings thereon. I mean, what's a boatyard?
Right.
Versus a marina, versus docking. That to me is for the Board of Appeals to decide on. because you're getting into semantics, and that's the lawyers and the zoning board of appeals to discuss. When that has been discerned, come before us to see how it's going to function, how it's going to work, the buildings, the road, the lights, all that stuff that we have purview over. But I don't think we should be having a discussion about the use.
John?
I agree with Bob and with Jim.
Yeah, this is where I have a problem. Because if it can't exist, how can we do a site plan review on it?
Can't.
Right. And we've got legal opinion that says it can't exist here. So I think you're absolutely right. We have to have the zoning board of appeals say, well, in their understanding, can it or can it not exist? Then it should come to us as site plan, because how can we review something that we don't even know if it's possible to make it a site?
Madam Chairman, I'm happy
Agreed.
to do it that way. I'm happy to go to the Board of Appeals for it. We did it this way because I think that's how it's traditionally done and how the boards usually prefer it done. But we're happy to, now that this issue has been brought up, it'd be nice to have a chance to, we at the Board of Appeals then would show where boat storage is all over town. We'd take the time and really show how the town as a whole has always wanted boat storage in the light industrial district.
Yeah, but if we were to go to site plan, Paul, I have some problems with that site and access and all kinds of things.
Well, I don't know what happened, so I'm not prepared, I wasn't even going to be coming to this meeting tonight so Tom was very courteous. He gave us a heads up that use was going to be an issue. Until that happened last week sometime, I forget. This was just going to be a site plan where Mike was going to come and talk about engineering. And so I don't know why he isn't here. Who knows? He might be out there watching, but we can't see him someplace. But if you would like, I can apply with the Board of Appeals. I think there are, obviously, if I apply to the Board of Appeals, I'm not going in under a marina and boat building repairs and storage. I'd go in under a special permit with the similar uses provision. And I'd go in with, there are two houses in this place. That's a pre-existing non-conforming use. It's a little strange in our Mass General laws, but that gives the Board of Appeals broad authority to change and expand the use from residential to boat building even. So I'd have two grounds to go before them asking for a special permit. And if they're denied, then they're denied. Then I wouldn't be here arguing that it's an allowed use. It will have already been decided.
Tom, there are a couple of questions that have come in under the chat, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Langen had raised his hand, and I just chatted back him and asked him if he could just put his comments into the chat. So we're waiting to see if Mr. Langen's sending something back. But
Okay.
most of that conversation was IT notifying us that Mr. Langen had his hand raised and me chatting back and Mr. Langen.
I see. Okay. And you're right, Paul, that this is backwards, but I don't see how we can do a site plan review if perchance it can't even exist.
No, that's legit. Once the issue is raised, it's legit to get that issue cleared up for us. I don't think it's written anywhere where we should go first. I think it's just it's been done that way. You go get site plan review first, and then you get Board of Appeals. But we can do it the other way around.
And we do go back and forth too, because the Board of Appeals does wait for us for site plan review too. So
well, this would be a long continuance here then. We were talking earlier, maybe we'll just continue it for a short period to let engineering review this. But if we're going to go to the Board of Appeals first, I don't know how we deal with that.
I don't either. Tom, what do you think?
Well, I would suggest that we continue it till, well, I would suggest initially that we continue it for till the 12th if we want to get back to town council's opinion and have something in print for Mr. Glenn prior to that, or if it's his preference, we can push it out a month and see if you're scheduled with the zoning board of appeals and what the schedule is then.
So, Madam, I
Yes.
would prefer, it's really, to me, I'm arguing first and foremost, this is a Board of Appeals decision. Rather than wait another month, and then it'd be the same argument. I'm not sure what it's going to say, but I'd be making the same argument that it's wrong. What the Board of Appeals really is the quasi judicial board in this town with regard to zoning. Why don't we just go there first? And Tom and the building commissioner can give his opinion to them too.
Tom?
Yeah, we do have Mr. Langen's comment here. Because my comment was in regards to 24055, showing boat storage under marinas. But you touched on it after. It seems it would be an allowed use.
Now, who is that?
That's Pete Langen. He's in the gallery.
Well, I appreciate that, Peter. I hope to meet you some, maybe I already have.
It just seems that we should be getting as much information as possible when we have something that is not fairly cut and dried before we go further with it. So what if, how about if we continue it then, Paul, to the January 26th meeting, which would give you enough time, and I think Tom can get you the information that you're looking for from the professionals.
Well, that's a call. If I appreciate you at least give me an opportunity to bring it to the quasi judicial board, let's call it, the zoning board of appeals. If we're going there first, I don't think there's a reason to come back here and just debating in front of you whether this is an allowed use, if we're going to go to the Board of Appeals first. Why don't I just go right there with my, just asking them for a special permit? And
Well, and that way the Board of Appeals also will have the benefit of what Tom
sure,
gets in writing too, or the opinion from the professionals, I believe. Is that a correct way of stating it, Tom?
That's fine. Now, because we're dealing under the state of emergency under COVID, there are no deadlines right now. But it's good form to ask for a deadline. So Paul, if you could just send me a letter asking for a continuance.
okay.
Beyond
I
the traditional
appreciate that.
deadline.
I keep forgetting that it's 90 days normally, and I was wondering, sometimes the Board of Appeals takes longer than that. I figured we'd put that debate, but that doesn't apply anymore now, right? It's the whatever the state of emergency.
Yes, 45 days after the state of emergency, everything is back on. So if you're not working during the state of emergency, you're gonna have a very busy month and a half when things are done. So we've been very busy working during the state of emergency to make sure we don't have a backlog. But
So Tom, we're not putting forth a date for the continuance. You're asking Paul to send you a letter asking for a continuance to,
extension beyond the stated deadlines in the bylaw.
All right,
Okay.
I can do that. All right.
so we don't vote tonight at all for a continuance, or do we?
Well, and that's the thing about our site plan is it's not a hearing, even
I
though we
know.
notify abutters. But
So we just continue it.
we typically treat them as hearings because the discussions that we have. But I think if Paul sends us a letter saying I waived the time and deadlines under the zoning bylaw, and we'll schedule it when we get back. I always keep them on the agenda so they don't fall through the cracks and I lose them. So we'll have a tickler on it on our file. But we'll follow up with Mr. Glenn.
So I appreciate the board giving me an opportunity to make my case to the ZBA. I appreciate that. And I hope to be coming back to you with the site plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So
Thank
we'll see
everybody.
you at another date at some point in time, and happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay?
Yep.
Bye-bye. Okay, we're moving on. The requested zoning, it's under public discussion. The requested zoning amendments for solar on Boxberry Hill Road, and I believe Bob Ament was speaking to this.
Yes, we are promoting Bob Ament, Evan Turner, and Matt Terry.
Okay,
Hi again. Well, we should be getting Evan Turner up here right away.
well, he's on, but
There we go.
There
I
he
just had
is.
to unmute myself after
Hi,
being
Evan.
in the audience for so long. Hello, everybody.
hello.
So I'm gonna I'll just give you a little bit of background. All of you know about the Cape Cod Country Club. It's 140 some acres out on Boxberry Hill Road, bordering an extensive portion of Coonamessett Pond and significantly surrounded by very substantial conservation property, the Coonamessett Reservation. So we have an existing golf course that's actually quite old. Unfortunately, golf is especially for those of us who like golf. Golf courses aren't as good at money making today as they were a few years ago anyway. And the owner of the Cape Cod Country Club property is at the point where he wanted to sell or do something else with the property. And he did explore a number of housing possibilities on that very substantial site. And it was recommended to him that he consider solar. Our office, Attorney Matt Terry, who's in the frame next to Evan, has had a bit of experience on such projects dealing with the Cape Cod Commission in other towns. And we've come up with a proposal for a very large solar project out in Hatchville. And so over the past number of months, Evan Turner, who is with, if I get this right, Aries Solar.
Aries Power Systems. It's just me as an LLC.
So
But I represent AMP.
Evan is the project manager. And we've been talking now for months with the Coonamessett Pond Association. Through them also with other neighbors. We've talked to the Town Energy Committee and the 300 Committee because there's a lot of open space issues involved here, a lot of energy issues. And the town meeting recently passed a declaration of a climate emergency and urged Falmouth to do what it could to get as quickly as possible to net zero emissions of carbon. And to give you an idea of the scale of this project, it would create energy sufficient for 6,000 residences. So with that, I'm going to let Evan describe the project and the timetable. I'll just give you a little forecast of that. It will make a big difference to the success of the project, to its efficiency, to its financial success, and therefore the success of the town with respect to this project. If this property, the 3 large tracts, can be put into the solar array, the large scale ground mounted solar overlay district at the April town meeting. And we want to talk to you a little bit about that. And also some suggested tweaks to the language in the present solar bylaw that would help this project quite a bit and take advantage of the fact that most of the property actually abuts conservation property and the kinds of setbacks that were proposed and are in the bylaw to protect abutting residential properties wouldn't need to be applied if town would make some changes, the town would make some changes to the bylaw. With that, go ahead, Evan.
Thank you, everybody. So as Bob mentioned, I'm Evan Turner. I work as a consultant, very much work married to a larger solar owner operator called AMP Energy. AMP is originally Canadian. and now also Denver-based owner-operator of renewable assets around the world, with a big focus, among other places, in the Northeast United States. They, a number of, going on almost a year ago, we were put in touch with the owners of the country club by Bob's firm as they were considering other uses of the property. And we eventually settled on an option to explore solar and do the development over the next several years, of which, we're 6 months-ish into the process. Larger scale timelines, assuming everything were to work out peachy, is roughly town meeting in April, which we certainly would hope to be put into the overlay district, among some other things Bob just mentioned. Post that into the Cape Cod Commission on the second half of 2021, back in front of you for the first half of 2022, with construction starting no sooner than by very late 2022, but very more likely 2023, just on how these timeframes line up. And within that process, we would be doing all the regulatory permitting, all of the interconnection work that runs with the utility in parallel, but generally does not intersect with the regulatory Cape Cod Commission and local Falmouth permitting, as well as, upon success, getting all of the financials and process lined up, from construction to taxes to working with the town, etc., as well as working with Mr. Friel and his family, who own the course and operate it. In the meantime, of course, the course will operate as a golf course for the indefinite future, but the hope is of everyone to transition it to a solar array. As Bob mentioned, we've talked for a number of months now with every stakeholder around the course we can get a hold of. We've gotten a lot of great engagement from the Coonamessett Pond Association, who predominantly are on the west side of the property along the pond, but do have some members there along the pond in between the golf course sections called Round Pond, and some of our closer neighbors there who are members of the association as well. And I think in the next, before your next meeting, I expect you will receive some literature from them, sort of recapping a lot of our meetings with them and their thoughts and feelings. But I feel very confident to say that, particularly compared to the alternative of residential plus development, whatever that looks like, they are pretty excited for the opportunity to do an array that is very large. There's no getting around that. It would be, as far as I understand, the largest array in a group in Cape Cod, but doing that instead of housing, which is the other predominant choice of the landowner if they are going to transition their property. So the process for that is us getting in the properties into the overlay district. And alongside that, there are a number of tweaks to the bylaw to empower the board that, in my experience, I think would be very beneficial for the project to make it succeed versus maybe not, maybe, what depends on a lot of other factors, as well as to, I guess, do better on some standards, using this project as a good template for a lot of the situations you can find with solar development on different physical circumstances next to residences. There's, I believe, your original bylaw language was crafted around the Blacksmith Shop Road site by Borrego a number of years ago, which is, my understanding, was an old sand pit. So some of the languages around setbacks and screenings are crafted specifically or with thinking of that nature, and don't necessarily represent an otherwise previously disturbed property like the golf course, that when it comes to minimizing clearing versus getting the most solar in the balance of environment and use and getting solar installed as a statewide and local goal, they don't quite mesh up perfectly. And I can walk you guys around a little bit, Bob, if you think that makes sense for me to show them around the site by screen share right now, unless you'd like to go over some of the language you proposed initially.
No, I think that you ought to screen share and show the plans, Evan. And I think that the board should keep in mind that what would happen with the solar development, one is the existing significant buffer to the pond would virtually all be preserved. Nobody would be trying to put houses closer to the pond, be a significant setback. Chemicals that presently come off of the golf course would no longer be used, of course. There'd be almost no traffic associated with the solar use of the property. Virtually no impacts to the Coonamessett Pond or to the conservation areas nearby. And that's why we think that we shouldn't say it for them because they will weigh in, but that the Coonamessett Pond Association is pretty supportive of this project. But you need to hear that from them, and hopefully you will. So with that said, Evan, why don't you just show the project?
Yes, sir. Thank you, everybody. So right now you should have a map on your screen with a bunch of pink parcel lines on it. Does everyone have that? Maybe a thumbs up or two just to make sure we're on.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. So the golf course consists of 4 main properties. The northwest property here along the pond edge, a southwest property here that is bordered on the left by Town of Falmouth conserved land, a east property here, southeast, which is the 4th hole, which is surrounded by parts of the Coonamessett Reservation, and a northeast property, additionally surrounded by more Coonamessett Reservation. In addition, the golf course facilities are here center between the 2 ponds with a private road with a parking lot and the clubhouse, as well as a B3 zoned parcel here, also owned by the Cape Cod Country Club. And lastly, completing the pie is a condo here owned by Mr. David Friel, who also owns the golf course. So altogether here, there are several independent residences along Boxberry Hill Road in the center here. And then the vacant house lots you will see are exclusively owned by Town of Falmouth as conservation land. So for instance, why this may be a private residence, all these other currently treed sites along the reservation here on the corners, all permanently conserved by Falmouth. The proposition broadly for the solar package are 3 arrays, which is governed by the SMART program and how that process happens. Large other giant regulation we certainly don't have to get into tonight, but one array per parcel, relatively large arrays, northeast, northwest, and southwest. We do not currently have plans and to use the southeast 4th hole. We think that's got better play as a conservation piece and certainly is not the right mix for the neighbors here. That's part of the bylaw we'd like to discuss. So the working along the bylaw itself creates a number of challenges on a site like this. Specifically, setbacks from property lines are based on what the zoning district is of the adjacent property. So in this case, everything's in the Ag 1 district, and therefore all the setbacks are 100 feet because everything is in the Ag district, which means we end up setting back 100 feet from fully conserved land as well as the other properties, particularly even across the street from another solar array property, which is just I think not something we're terribly forecast. Same thing over here, conserved Town of Falmouth land along a fairway, it'll be set back from. So that's one item. And the second major item is that the bylaw does limit tree cutting to 2 acres per property, per project. And I don't think that was terribly, understandably, this is a large project. I don't think the bylaw was conceived with this relatively sized large property in mind, because it says 2 acres regardless. It does not mention a property size, excepting to say that a minimum property size is 7 acres, of which 2 acres would be approximately 2.8 acres, something like that. You know, and that might not be something similar to what you talked about right down here, I believe, earlier tonight. A roughly 7 acre property that is treed might have been, in that territory. So part of the desire here is that we can amend some of those bylaws requirements to empower the board to let us clear some trees and put them in other spots by replanting vegetative buffer along public ways and next to residences, more or less with the idea in mind of, if you were living there, what would you want? And I can tell you, I have talked extensively with the neighbor here who was one of the most impacted here at the north end of Round Pond, and Mr. Conrad Hugan, who is also a member of the Coonamessett Pond Association. And about what kind of things the neighbors in this area would like. He has acted as a very good proxy. You may hear from him in the future. But there are certain things that the bylaw simply does not require that I think would be excellent for you guys to add to your toolkit of ability to govern solar arrays in general, as well as just do the best projects, both from the quantity of solar and the good work there to how well they can treat the community, visual screening, appropriate setbacks, etc. So on your screen, I'm going to show you this item right here. Please ignore the green blob. It is a layer I cannot somehow get out of the picture. Is what the current bylaws approximately say can be built on the site. Altogether, this is approximately 15 to 16 megawatts over 1, 2, and 3 projects. You will notice they stick largely to the fairways, leaving large treat areas in the middle, which for the purposes of solar is hugely inconvenient, even though they're in the middle of the site and don't make an enormous difference to the outside view because you'll still be seeing in from the outside pretty consistently. These sites have also included some measure of the 2 acres of tree clearing where I just figured it was the most advantageous. By example, down here on the 6th and 7th holes where trees in between the fairways would need to be cleared to have a functional array operate there, since the trees shade you so dramatically, but otherwise, would block the entire parcel more or less from being used if we had to stick to the fairways in some areas exclusively. If we were able to tweak that bylaw to bring us to the ability to keep a net of 2 acres, more or less, of deforestation, and then we can replant areas, we get a lot more ability, honestly, just to do a better project, more clean power, and better treatment of the neighbors when we have more megawatts to play with to make a bigger budget for landscaping, screening, etc. And sometimes there are just bigger setbacks you need to be able to ask for. As I say, as a solar developer who sees dozens of projects, there are many cases where 100 feet is just not enough. And I think it would be wise for the board to empower themselves to manipulate that according to what the use of the neighboring property is, rather than just the zoning district it is in. So that would include something more like this, where we're gonna, and I'll use this house in the future as an example, set back here further from this residence that has a beautiful view of the 3rd green, not something you want to put solar right next to. In addition to these folks having more setback along the road, less setback here in a fairway that otherwise we can't work in. If we jump back here, the 100-foot setback precludes me from working in this fairway, which is already impacted from a land perspective, but I simply can't touch it based on the setback rules. We just get a better project. I can effectively replant every tree that we would clear and put it on the outside of the property for visual screening, for neighborhood, enhancement. We've left some areas here for the sledding hills that I'm told the kids go on every time it snows. Things like that we can do if we can manipulate, and I guess, I don't know, manipulate's not the right word. I'd say improve or empower the bylaws in that regard. And I'll bring you up the layers that create this just by example. I will use our house right down here as well as this area here. These folks own a house here. They are building a second house right here. Beautiful view of the 3rd green. I would invite you sometime to drive by and take a look if you think that 100 feet, which brings you approximately to the north 3rd of the green, is a sufficient setback. Please keep in mind your bylaws at the moment do not require any screening, which is a huge, potential issue for neighbors. I believe when you were looking at the original Blacksmith Shop Road piece, sand pit with trees around the outside, that was kind of done by default. I see enough projects to know that there are opportunities for less than excellent visual profiles to happen, to put it politely, with the current regs, and I would recommend that you improve them in general. to empower yourself to make that area screen, and where good work can be done to increase the setbacks. For me, as a developer, it's just about workable acreage. So being able to work in the treed areas back here, being able to work in the treed areas in the middle of the site means I can just not use areas closer to the street. This has a really uphill view of the rest of the site, roughly level to here. I could leave all of that unused if I can get some of this area back. And lastly, for instance, let's see, here's the 100-foot setback. By example, not being able to use most of that fairway is kind of counterintuitive. I can use all of this here, but I'd rather give these folks more setback if I can work on the property. The last piece of that is earth moving, which Bob and recommended we include as well here, because, for instance, I've talked with Mr. Conrad about what we would do with the southern area, the golf course, and the clubhouse here, all of which is under contract for AMP to effectively take over the entire golf course property, minus this site right here in the condo to the north. We would love to, from the hill right here, remove the shed, remove the operational portion of the golf course, and build a very large landscape berm that would prevent Conrad entirely from seeing the array. Treat your neighbors like you'd want to be treated. I want to not have to look at the array every day. Excellent. I can't currently do that if I can't move any earth around the site at all. So I think there's some places where we'd like to work on the bylaws to let you tailor it to be the best site. That also lets us get a better and larger amount of solar involved, creates more revenue, creates more work, for jobs and such as we go through construction, the tax value for the town, and overall makes a site much more likely to succeed rather than a site that is more limited, working between the fairways, leaving the trees in place, and leaving it entirely possible, given the cost of Cape Cod real estate, that we simply will be unable to afford the land. And that, of course, would leave the Freels going on to option B. As Bob mentioned, some of the residential prospects 140 acres would have. And I guess I will slow my monologue down and go back to Bob for things I'm sure I've missed. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I perhaps want to emphasize a couple of what we need. I mean, first of all, we need to have this property put in this large-scale ground-mounted solar array and solar overlay district in order to be able to have a solar project on property, much of which is already cleared fairways, rather than do anything else with the property. So we're certainly looking for the support of the planning board with respect to getting into the solar overlay district, so that we at least can start the process. We can't go to the Cape Cod Commission. We're never going to come back to the planning board. We're never going to have any permitting to do if the property isn't eligible for a solar array approval. And then when you look at that plan and you see how much of the property abuts the conservation property, and you think about the 100-foot setback, remember the 100-foot setback is supposed to be, it's stated to be a no-touch zone. It says no disturb is the language in the present bylaw. So that would mean that the first 100 feet can't be disturbed, even if it's already all cleared for golf course. And then you would have your fencing, then you'd have some kind of a perimeter road, and you wouldn't be able to have any solar array practically until you're about 135 feet away from conservation property. Now that 100-foot setback is in there to protect the abutters. And it's not in there to protect conservation property, which doesn't need that setback because the solar project isn't going to adversely impact the conservation property. If housing went in there, then as you know, the setback for structures is 10 feet from the property line. So the setback is to protect the butters. It's not to somehow limit the ability to use the property. And so one suggestion we have is that the planning board have the authority to be able to reduce the required setback where you're abutting permanently protected conservation open space, or where you are abutting other property under the control of the same owner. And we've also said, or if you're immediately across the street from such other property, either conservation property or property in common ownership. Again, all subject to getting site plan review from the planning board. So we think the planning board having that authority is going to make for a substantially more beneficial solar project. The other change we're suggesting to the bylaw, where presently you can have 2 acres of woods cleared, it's referred to as deforestation in the bylaw. You could clear 2 acres of woods on a 7-acre parcel, which should be 29% of the parcel. Our request is that that language simply be changed to say 2 acres or 20% of the lot, whichever is greater. So on a project over 10 acres, well, you could have more than 20%, more than the 2 acres. You couldn't have more than 20%, but it could be more than 2 acres. But we've also provided that if there is any excess clearing of woods, that the planning board can require mitigation on-site or off-site, including reforestation projects. So for instance, that 4th hole that Evan showed you, the one hole that's not proposed for development, that's 7 acres, and that could be all reforested. But it would mean that Evan could take an area of the course in the middle of the course that has woods in it, and be able to create a more efficient and significantly more powerful generator of electricity. So those kind of changes seem to be very consistent with what town meeting passed, directing town boards to do what it can to get Falmouth closer to a net zero emissions of carbon. And that's what the proposed zoning changes, which are really pretty minimal, which we've sent to Tom to review. Now, a couple of months ago, when we had a chat with the planning staff and the town managers, we proposed simply having the planning board have the authority to waive some of the requirements in the present bylaw. We kicked around whether that should be a special permit process. There are some reasons why I gather that the town thinks that we shouldn't include a special permit process for the solar and leave it at site plan review. And I think there was an interest in our being more specific, more targeted about what are the changes that we think would be important to make this and other projects better. And so that's where we've come up with the ability to reduce the setbacks for conservation property and commonly owned properties. And the idea of on larger projects, larger sites, not be limited to the same 2 acres that would apply whether you've got a 7-acre site or a 27-acre site. Basically, have the percentage be the same, actually even lower. We're suggesting 20% would be sufficient for this project for us to pretty much maximize what you could get out of it while preserving the portions we want to preserve. So that's where we're at. We need to get put into the solar array district, and we're hoping that the bylaw would give the planning board a little more discretion in these specific areas in order to have a project, which is a really pretty significant project in terms of creating clean energy and protecting the pond and the neighborhood from everything other than golf.
Okay. Bob, right now I see on what was presented to us, you've only got 2 articles proposed, one in regard to including this particular parcel in the overlay district. But the
There
other-
actually would be 3 parcels, because there are 3 separate assessors parcels of,
Right, no, I see that. I'm just,
yeah. In the second
Lumping
article, as I said, originally, we submitted something that was not as targeted. And we came up with final language only today and sent over to Tom, and I don't know if he circulated
No.
a bylaw that's really pretty brief. It says to see if the town will amend the bylaw, 1, to allow the planning board to reduce the setbacks, again, next to conservation and in common ownership. And the second section is to revise the bylaw to say not more than 2 acres or 20% of the lot can be cleared, and to provide for the planning board's ability to require mitigation for any excess over 2 acres.
no, we have
And-
not seen that, Bob,
Yeah.
because it came too late today for us.
I understand, and that's basically it. Well, of course, we haven't submitted these articles in the formal process. I'm not even sure what the date is that the warrant closes. Maybe somebody knows. And
Tom knows, I
Yes,
think.
Yes, ma'am. If I may, yeah, the warrant closes on January 15th.
Okay.
And assuming that Evan and company is going to submit the zoning articles, we would schedule hearings for that and any other petitioned articles we get in as soon as practical after the close of the warrant. Typically, I check in with the manager's office. We get all the applications, all the permits, or all the petitioned articles, and we schedule a hearing where the board will actually be sort of doing a bit more discussion about the zoning articles themselves. So we did get that from Bob about 1:45 today, and I didn't forward it to the board because we didn't get it in a timely manner. But we have had a lot of conversations about this. They have been doing their homework and talking to the neighbors. So assuming that we receive the submitted zoning articles by January 15th, then we'll schedule a hearing and we'll have a more extensive conversation about the zoning articles and whether the planning board wants to recommend them to town meeting.
So Tom, how do we continue with this discussion in regard to the solar array on Boxberry Hill?
Well, we're all done for tonight. We just wanted them to.
I know that.
Yeah. So as I said, they're going to submit articles. And then when the articles come in, we're going to have a hearing and we're going to talk about them sometime, I'm going to guess February-ish, about those particular zoning articles.
Okay,
I'm
so
wondering
tonight-
is this an opportunity when the planning board members might have any questions about what we've talked about and not so much the zoning intricacies, but just questions about the project and impacts.
Yeah, I haven't gotten there. I'm sorry. I skipped ahead, Bob, is a little bit on that.
Yeah, I just want to make
Just
sure. we weren't-
As an example, I'll tell you that one of the things that Evan has talked a lot with the Coonamessett Pond Association is doing a baseline study of Coonamessett Pond before the golf course goes away. And then for quite a number of years after it's gone away, just to see what this does to the quality of the pond.
Oh, yeah. It'll improve it, I'm sure. Does anybody on the planning board have any questions or comments in regard to this for either Bob or Evan? Jim?
Well, I just heard the word amendment and waivers used back and forth. And I think that's really the part I need to get understanding on, is because we'll be amending an existing bylaw that will apply all over town.
Right.
Or is it waivers just to this site?
No, it would say in any case where the land abuts permanent open space, the planning board would have some more discretion, for instance. So it would
Okay.
apply everywhere, but we think that's a good change.
All right. That's what I was concerned about, because the other sites aren't surrounded by conservation. They're surrounded by residential, and those buffers are put there to protect them. I got it. I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else? Yes, John.
Yes, would the proposed bylaws encompass the whole 140 acres?
Well, the bylaws would be the bylaws, so the property would be evaluated and regulated under the revised bylaw. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the reduction in setback would be requested everywhere, nor does it mean that the planning board would have to approve the request. But
What I'm asking is, would there be any other uses left available for the 140 acres other than solar?
well, that's a good point. Evan can respond.
Well,
to
it's
that.
an overlay district, so the existing uses are still there, correct?
No, the golf course won't be there.
Right.
And
So-
and although there is the history of
No,
this,
but the golf course is presently zoned what?
Agricultural.
agriculture, except for areas around the parking lot that you can see there. And there's about 8 acres that are zoned business, interestingly.
Okay.
Some corporate campus, they might like that, but
Not so
or it
simple.
also means some fairly intense housing would be
Okay.
potentially allowed there. And for history, that is the site right where the arrow is now. That's where the old
Playhouse.
Cape Cod Falmouth Playhouse was
Yep.
before it unfortunately burned. And that's the history of why that's a business-owned property. So,
So let me
but
answer
there
the
is no
question there.
intent. All of the development on these 3 sites that would be rezoned, there wouldn't be anything left for other development, which is, I think, the question that John was looking towards.
Yeah,
What
so
I'm
I will,
asking, what I'm asking is, will this encompass the whole 140 acres? Or would there be 40 acres left for somebody could do a housing development or?
No, there's no
do a wind-
intention.
do a-
There
do
won't.
a wind farm or?
let me jump on that, Bob.
Okay.
Our intention, we have a lease option for the entirety of the 3 main properties with an agreement that we can get a hold of this 4th property as we need for conservation purposes. That would probably be a purchase and a donation. We know we're going to need some conservation acreage to satisfy the Cape Cod Commission for their acreage offsets when we do impact some trees, whatever that amount is. Our intent is to get every square foot we responsibly can into solar, and we will lease the entirety of the Cape Cod Country Club. So that lease area puts it under the predominance of the solar company. We don't expect the owner to have any clawbacks for acreage around, say, in the north here or on the outside to do some kind of mixed housing on the edge. What I'm hoping is that if we can get some of these bylaw amendments and inclusion to the overlay district to happen, is that I can also convince him and we can make a business case to include the parcel here that's B3, as well as this old condo here from the 70s, and wrap it up in one nice, clean solar array that's fully wrapped and takes up every square foot of the property. And maybe he'll even let us buy it at that point.
So
For him,
Evan, you're suggesting that we may want to have all 5 of those parcels, and perhaps even the parking area, although that perhaps needs to be part of a buffer to the pond.
Yeah.
But we may not only want the 3 large parcels in the solar overlay district.
David has expressed that he's willing to let us permit those. He needs to be sold on the business decision of committing a B3 parcel to solar rather than something more dense. I can tell you that has been a big focus on the Coonamessett Pond folks, who naturally want to avoid something more dense of a use there on a private road at the end that's pretty quiet right now. Because as you may have discussed, or you did discuss earlier, I noticed in the regs that a marina is allowable under B3 as a use, I believe, by special permit. So, some of the ambitions of our waterborne neighbors are to keep the area from having dense housing, and they naturally see that B3 holdout as a, way that you might not get it all done. So I think they're hoping that we can get a full swing of solar here so that I can make the right case to David to let us go all the way with the whole thing and wrap it all up for solar and be done with it.
I'd point out that the existing setback of the vegetation from the pond is in most cases about 150 feet. So that will remain, and the thinking is that from the pond and from across the pond, you won't know that the solar is there. In addition, that wooded area all along the pond creates the opportunity for a path system, and that's one reason we have talked initially to the 300 committee, a path that would go all the way from the public beach, which you can see at the very north end of the pond, that would go all the way along Coonamessett Pond, past that south array, and then out to to Boxberry Hill Road, on the property that's already owned by the town as conservation property. So there's really some neat networking of the trails here.
Well, this golf course is unique in the fact that it has a tremendous amount of road frontage. Not many golf courses have road frontage like this place does.
Well, one of the results of that is that you can create an awful lot of approval not required lots on this property if that's what you were trying to do.
Sure. Same. If you're not using it for solar, you could do the same thing. But another question I
Lost you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
He's froze up.
He froze.
What timing? To fill in the gap a little bit while John may come back to us, we had Cape and Island do some mock-ups.
I have
this night. And just
Can
to
you
give
hear me?
Example, and
Okay, John's back with us now.
John wants to know if Falmouth will receive any of that electricity, or is it going to go somewhere else?
Mm-hmm. So it's an open question. The way we're hoping to do this is a new program under the Solar Smart Orchestration, where we can engage Falmouth to help operate the array with us, the mowing, the plowing, it's most of the physical stewardship. And we can get treated better under the SMART program. We can pay more to the town in taxes. That program mandates that we send the power straight to the utility Eversource. But in that case, we're just paying more money in taxes. That's a pretty equitable way to share the upside. I will tell you, this array conglomerate probably powers about a sixth of town. There is, residence to residence, no particular need for everyone to buy this power versus another array somewhere. It's not terribly important that the town as a government wants to buy it, but we can also very clearly on one of our other arrays, if Falmouth is interested as a government in buying power, we have that opportunity presently with our array in Sandwich we just did. That can work across town borders very easily. In this case, mostly it's a large tax revenue. If I can do 15 megawatts under the standard bylaw or 32 under the improved, that's just more revenue for the town and the tax base, because it's typically done per megawatt of solar installed. Along those lines, we spoke to the tree clearing earlier, and we'll share these with you guys when we get them one more edition done. Cape and Island Engineering is our engineer, and they put together some mock-ups of like the type of clearing that would take place if we were able to get those bylaws amended. And some of the places where you'd have reduced setback, like 100 feet here, but less over here against the conserved land. But the numbers, I guess, to focus on are about the tree clearing, that all in, under what we would propose, about 20 acres of tree clearing. 6.5 in the south, 4 3/4 on the northwest, 8.5-ish on the east array. I have at least 15 acres of land that for buffer use, I'm planning to replant for neighbors. Like what would you do? What would you want if you lived there? Like I'll harp on that all day. So, there's a good 50 feet along the public ways. When you add up the better part of 1.5 miles of public way frontage, there's about 8 acres there of just landscaped area. It's a large project. I'm not going to cheap out on how much money we spend making it fit the community the best way it should. Doesn't necessarily mean getting the most array out of it, but it's a matter of I think one good project opens the door to the next. And I want projects that make a good reputation and are responsible to the neighborhood. One of the reasons we like this site, despite its size, which is excellent, it has very few neighbors, residential neighbors for the acreage. 7 or 8 for 140 acres is an exceptionally good draw from a how does it fit next to someone's house perspective. So all in, if I'm thinking 20 acres of clearing and we could have a net of, a 2 acre give on each site, we're down to about 14 acres of impact that I think we're going to plant more trees than we actually clear.
Yeah.
And that'll be something I'm sure we engage the Cape Cod Commission on as well. And that's before we're actually planning on that 4th hole, about 7.5 acres. I'm about 98% confident that's going to be purchased and conserved as part of the Cape Cod acreage offset requirements. And I think, we've talked to the 300 committee just to familiarize themselves with this area. They are very familiar because they did the Coonamessett Reservation work. And that property dovetails in very well to just go back to nature, get it started off on the right tree planting territory. It just fits the property overall. Long answer to a short question.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments that they wish to make at this point? Bob?
No, I've heard enough. I think they have their work cut out for them, and we'll see them sometime in the future. And ready to move on from this topic.
Yep. Thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good luck.
Okay, we move on to planning board discussion. Are there any committee reports tonight? Okay, announcements. Any announcements? Okay. General correspondence. I have a couple of things here. If I can get the pages separated. Complete Streets Prioritization Plan. I think you all got that. Improving safety and accommodating all users. Town of Falmouth virtual public meeting. There's a public input session on Wednesday, January 13th at 6 p.m. And there's a link to join if you wish to join in on it. And it goes into what is a complete street. A complete street provides accommodations for all users, including motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, and persons with disabilities. For more information, please visit, it's capecodcommission.org/Falmouth Complete Street. So they'll have this in the planning office too, if anybody wishes to look at it, but I know everybody on the planning board received it. And the other thing is there's an announcement for immediate release. The town of Falmouth to release website design update and new domain name. The town's website will have a new look by the end of the day on today. The goals of this modest design update were to make the site easier to navigate, to make more efficient use of the space on the browser screens, and to improve the overall aesthetic. At the same time, the domain name for the town website is changing from www.falmouthmass.us to www.falmouthma.gov. The town's information technology staff have worked to make this change as seamless as possible. Both website addresses will remain operational. Anyone who enters the old address will be automatically redirected to the falmouth.gov address. Switching to the .gov address gives visitors to the site greater confidence that it is the official site of the town. Only government agencies are able to secure the rights to websites with a .gov extension, whereas sites that end with .us can be secured by any US resident or organization. And there was a whole team of people who put this together, and there are even new and more improved things coming along. So that's the two things in general correspondence. And I think we've got our future agenda items pretty well set out for us. Do we not, Tom?
Yes, ma'am. We have an action-packed couple of months, and we've had an action-packed past couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
So our next meeting is January 5th, where we'll be having our third hearing on recodification. We'll also be discussing what zoning articles we are going to submit to the selectmen. It's pretty much a given that we are going to be submitting recodification. There's a couple of map changes to the zoning bylaw that we've been trying to clear up that we might try to put in with the recodification as well. And then there's a discussion, is there any other bylaws we might want to submit, such as the discussion we've had about site plan review? But we'll have that discussion on January 5th.
Does anybody have any comments on that? Okay.
The other thing that's also on the agenda tentatively is an update on the multifamily bylaw as well. For the 5th.
And I don't know, John, whether you'll be ready for that or not. Please get in touch with Tom. Okay?
I will, thank you.
Okay. And I want to wish all of you happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Happy,
Healthy.
oh yeah, Happy New Year too.
Happy
because
New Year.
Absolutely. So it is now 8:51. This meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Night.
Good night.